your customers are hiring your product to solve a problem for them. And they live in a certain set of circumstances and context in which they experience the need for your solution. And by asking really a relatively straightforward series of questions to your customer, you can get a very solid understanding of what that end-to-end customer experience should look like for your future customers.
Welcome to another episode of From Startup to Wunderbrand with Nicholas Kuhne. Georgiana Laudi joins us from Canada today, and she is a strategic advisor, mentor, and speaker who's passionate about helping teams turn customer value into revenue-generating outcomes. She's currently the co-founder and COO of Forget the Funnel, which helps founders and execs tired of stalled growth turn customer insight into measurable product growth. So for a lot of us listening to this podcast, we're thinking, how are we going to take our company from our first 100,000 to 10,000 customers? This is the person you need to chat to. So we're going to talk a little bit about her book, which is called Forget the Funnel, a customer-led approach for driving predictable recurring revenue, which sounds like a unicorn. That's what everyone wants. So we'll get a little bit about that today. So Georgiana, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
So what I always do when I do my snooping is I have had a look at your LinkedIn account, and I thought I had a lot of jobs, but wow. You know, it's like going onto page 2 of Google. I had to go onto page 2 of your LinkedIn
so
page and have a look at some of the roles you've had. And it's
this means old, is what you're saying.
We've got to find a euphemism for old. I mean, what we can. Experience, there we go.
Yeah.
But it's all been basically in the software as a service space. And you've worked for some big brands, or brands that are big now, such as one of them that I used years ago, which is Sprout Social, which is great. Those kind of businesses are obviously coming to the fore now. But you've had a variety of opportunities working at a lot of companies. I'm sure 50% of those businesses are no longer in business, because that's what happened in the SaaS space. But maybe let's talk a little bit about your background, how you got into marketing, and how you have sort of navigated your career to get to this particular point where you're running your own business.
Wow. I mean, to your point, there's a lot of roles there, and that's because I have been doing this for quite a while. I mean, how I got into marketing was, in the very, very early 2000s. I got into digital marketing probably in the late 90s, early 2000s. I worked for my family business, my father's business, for about 8 years, and really learned digital marketing there. And then I went agency side ever so briefly. Really did not enjoy that experience whatsoever. And went out on my own for a little bit and did some freelancing, what I would have considered freelancing. And then I went in-house, and for a number of years I was at a SaaS company, B2B, marketing, as the VP marketing there for a number of years, and experienced, it was an amazing experience. We grew very, very quickly, experienced all the very typical startup things. And when I had my second child, I decided I wanted to go back to entrepreneurship and doing my own thing. And so I left there without really a plan what I was going to do next, and posted to the socials, as you do when you leave a role. And my inbox quickly blew up with founders wanting to work with somebody who had experienced that sort of type of growth, because this is a number of years ago now. It's 2017 or so, and at the time there were not quite as many people who were quite this senior in SaaS. Now in 2024, 2025, it's quite a different story. There's many, many more people in this space these days. But what it sort of convinced me was that I didn't really need to go back in-house, and I could provide a ton of value to companies, providing more fractional advisory and now more project-based work, which is what I'm doing now with Forget the Funnel.
So I suppose the advisory side of your work could be the most frustrating, but also the most enjoyable part of your work, because you've gone through the ringer with a whole bunch of companies who've made good decisions and bad decisions, and you've kind of seen which ones have worked. But and obviously, every business is a snowflake. It's got its own particular characters and so on. But there's some things that are generic to all of these platforms. And I just want to go into your book quickly. And the title got me interested because you're saying, forget the funnel. The funnel is the most important thing. Why on earth would you tell people not to focus on a funnel? Even I teach you outing me as somebody who knows nothing. Let's go.
I mean, we get asked this question a lot, as you can imagine. The funnel serves a purpose in terms of, a lot of people know what it is, and it's very easy to understand, and it's a good tool for communication purposes. But when it comes to the actual practicality of applying it to a business, it is not the best tool to leverage. For many reasons. One of the reasons is it's generic. It does not provide a sort of nuanced understanding or view of your customer's experience. Certainly not to the level that customers, expect these days, or that companies need to provide these days. It's very generic. It sort of flattens our view. It's very focused on value to the business versus value to the customer. So I talk a lot about, transactional sort of moments of success versus experiential for our customers. It's really about, our customers' success milestones, not our transactional milestones. The other problem as well is that it is very generic. It's an unhelpful and generic tool for teams to use. And so it just provides a lot of spaghetti at the wall type of strategies where everybody's kind of doing the same thing all along the way, and we're all leveraging the same tactics, and the experts say to do this and best practices, and we apply best practices when in truth there's a lot of advantage in just knowing our customers a little bit better, and we can provide that much better of an experience and increase conversions, performance, revenue. The other reason why funnels are problematic, particularly for recurring revenue businesses, is that it's the beginning of our relationship when somebody becomes a customer, and it really is about providing continued value and even expanding on that value. And I know there's odd shapes of funnels that people have come up with over the years. I'm very aware, but still generic, the same as every other company, the same as every other product, assumes all customers are the same. So that's why I pick on it. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I think you're picking up what I'm putting down.
Yeah. So I'm going to go through the 4 sections in this book because I think the way you've structured it is quite nice. Part one is forgetting the funnel. Part 2 is getting inside your customer's head. Part 3, mapping the customer's experience, and operationalizing your customer insights. Okay, those are the 4 that your book basically focuses on. And the one that I really love is mapping the customer experience. I'm a big customer journey person, so I love making customer journey. I go every now and then. I go onto the internet and I go, let's type in customer journey, and up come some nice new images of different ways of doing it or different examples, and go, oh, that's a nice one. Let me keep that in my little memory bank. Mm-hmm. We're talking more about experience. SaaS or recurring revenue models, it's a very tough business, and creating customer loyalty is another side of it, which is extremely important. And the key thing you mentioned is turning customer intel into predictable recurring revenue. Mm-hmm. That's the key, I guess, is recurring revenue. So
yes,
maybe for new companies or companies that are starting out and are just trying to get new customers, maybe talk about the value of how, or some good examples of companies who've focused on the recurring revenue side in terms of really giving great service to a customer that keeps them coming back for more.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's lots of examples that I could potentially sort of lean on. We really do focus with the teams that we work with. We really focus on value realization. And what does value realization mean for your customer? and what sort of, I'll say product usage, but obviously this could apply of a software product environment, but what sort of engage and product usage, so to speak, would you need to help customers reach in order to feel very confident that you're going to be in a position to provide continued value over the long term? And if you can have a solid understanding of what a happy, healthy customer looks like for your solution, then you can do all kinds of things from that point. You can reverse engineer their experience so that you can design exactly what that early product experience should look like, what should first value feel like, and what should that include, and very importantly, not include, because lots of problems there. But also, again, if we reverse engineer and go even one step further out, what is the problem that we're helping our customer solve? This is marketing table stakes, right? Really understanding the problem space that we exist in, really understanding the context in which our customers are in on the day, that they decide that they need a better solution, all the way through to this point of value realization. So I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. There's a lot to talk about there, and really understanding the problem space that we're in is really the key here. But referring specifically to the customer journey and how we operationalize this is getting a good understanding in a measured way, like an actual KPI. A lot of people refer to this as, a North Star metric or something to that effect. We think of it as value realization and really understanding what healthy product engagement looks like. Because again, you can reverse engineer for the product onboarding experience and how your marketing, should sort of work and play in your whole go-to-market motion. But you can also go the other way, which is continued value and value expansion. And so you can learn about, once somebody becomes a customer, what next? What challenges or adjacent challenges might they need that you could potentially help them with? There's lots that we could talk about on that side. So in general, what we do is we think about the customer experience in 3 phases: struggle, evaluation, and growth. Struggle is, as you can imagine, somebody out in the world experiencing the problem that you solve. Evaluation is really that early product experience, really proving that this thing can solve my problem, all the way through to value realization, where that new customer is saying, huzzah, this thing is going to solve my problem. This is it. I'm firing my old way. And then the growth phase is where recurring revenue businesses live and die. Unfortunately, the growth phase is the one that, the vast majority of SaaS companies, unfortunately, neglect. Retention is very important. I think that a lot of teams prioritize retention, but they don't operationalize the growth phase to the point where they're really concentrating on, continued value being delivered, customer marketing opportunities, expansion, net revenue retention. More mature companies do, but certainly earlier stage companies very often neglect that growth phase. I think there's a stat from ProfitWell that shared 75% of founders and executives focus all of their attention on acquisition. And the vast majority of efforts, everybody has experienced this, right? Certainly somebody who does marketing and tech has experienced this, it's all about acquisition. Lots of reasons for that. But again, recurring revenue SaaS businesses live and die based on that growth phase and the ability to deliver continued value over time. And so that's what we're really trying to get at the heart of, so that you can build a sustainable and predictable sort of revenue model by delivering value to customers in a measurable way.
It sounds like there's a lot of research involved in this particular phase, because you're talking about customer journey, you're talking about sort of breaking down what the customer's needs are. What type of research do you, is it using online surveys? Is it having focus groups? Talk to me about and it must be a bit slightly frustrating sometimes for your clients, because they probably think they know everything, and then all of a sudden, do a bit of research, see what the customers really think and what their experience is, and they might be sort of blindsided by something that they never even thought was the most important thing of their brand, or something that was completely missing. Right. Maybe talk to me about the kind of research that you do to figure this out.
Yeah, this is my favorite question that we get asked, because a lot of people assume that research is long. Oftentimes people have had, bad experiences with research that has, led to more questions than answers, research that, gets dusty and dies on a shelf. So just we are, our whole MO, our entire sort of way of operating is really to make sure that any customer research that you're running is very, very actionable. We have a very pointed and targeted way of running research that surprises a lot of people, actually, because of how quickly it can be done. And part of the reason why it can be done so quickly is because we leverage the jobs to be done methodology and approach to research, which is basically based on this idea that your customers are hiring your product to solve a problem for them. And they live in a certain set of circumstances and context in which they experience the need for your solution. And by asking really a relatively straightforward series of questions to your customer, you can get a very solid understanding of what that end-to-end customer experience should look like for your future customers. And you can do that with just 10 to 12 well-run jobs to be done interviews. This is why we're able to do this for the teams that we work with in just 4 weeks, because we can, it's very important to speak to the right customers. So segmenting, qualified customers to learn from is critically important. But once we get that sweet spot list of customers, we really only need 10 to 12 conversations with them to reach the point of sort of pattern saturation, so to speak, where we feel, we've got a good understanding of the makeup of that, ideal customer base. And then what we're learning from them is more, less so what features do you like and, willingness to pay and things, features. We're really just trying to understand and get a sort of documentary level understanding of their experience. So like, what was it like? On the day that you decided that you needed something new, tell me about that experience. What did you do next and next? So we're literally just asking them to tell us what happened, because it can give us a ton of insight into that customer journey, which we can then, map to our product and our offering and even the product usage, which puts us in a really great position to be able to build that customer experience map.
Well, I always talk about that being putting the skin on the bones, because from a statistics perspective, they'll probably have lots of data in terms of UX and website and leads, etc. But this is now putting the skin on it. So I love. That's for those who want to know, the qualitative research, which is quite fun. A question I want to ask you is, I use a lot of AI tools now, and specifically for podcasting. And there are 2 companies that I go in between the whole time. One is Riverside that we're using now, and the other one is Descript.
Yes.
And it is so tough, because I bought a year's subscription because there was a great deal on Riverside. That's how they got me. And then I can't do everything I need to do on Riverside. I need to go to Descript, and Descript has got this marvelous editing process. So I bought Descript in addition. So I did my editing on that. Then 3 months later, and I was about to cancel my Riverside subscription, and then Riverside brought in some new interesting tools. I was like, oh, okay, well, I've still got a couple of months left. I'll stay with them. Just by the time that I was about to cancel my Descript license, Descript came up with even more awesome things than Riverside had, and it's been this. I haven't been able to leave either of them, because I need both of them, and they are so awesome. They're both fantastic. It's annoying the living daylights out to me, but this is maybe an unusual case. But if I was the CMO of Riverside or Descript, those would be good clients for you, I think, because in terms of the they've got me. So the acquisition side is done. Growth side, the competitors in the market have just grown exponentially. Every day there's a new AI, etc. Editing company coming through. To maintain, I want to just touch on customer loyalty here, which is, that must be a very difficult part of the business now, especially in a industry that is changing. You've got to launch new products and new additions to your service every month. Is that something you can help with marketers and say, look, don't release all 6 at once, wait 3 months, look at the cadence that your competitors are releasing things, do it in between? Is that something that you've had experience with or work with?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say to, the CMO or the CPO or the head of producting, most likely at one of these companies, is customer segmentation is critical, and really, really getting clear on the makeup of your customer. Sometimes it depends on the size of the company. I would say like an earlier stage company, typically if you've got too many customer segments and you're solving too many quote unquote like jobs to be done for your customers, you should probably focus and pick one to do a really good job of before running with all of them. That said, Descript has been around for what, 5, 6 years now, maybe a little bit more. Riverside, I'm not sure how big the team is or the makeup of the customer base. I imagine, though, in both of those cases, they are trying to acquire more than one type of customer. Very, very likely. They're in a really commoditized market, as you said. So definitely challenging. But without really having a solid customer base, the makeup of your customer base, it's very hard to make decisions about what types of features to launch, let alone how to launch them or when to launch them and when is the most appropriate time to introduce them to your customers. And I would say that making those decisions is so much easier when you can think about your customers through the lens of their job to be done and what they're trying to accomplish with your solution and the context that they're in. Sometimes it's about their adjacent tools, or sometimes it's about the size of their company, or they're a growing company where that are adding new team members. That might be a particularly advantageous thing to know about your customers, depending. Understanding who your ideal customers are that you want to pursue, segmenting them in a meaningful way so that you can better understand what to launch in what order, and how even to describe that too. Because when it comes to the customer experience, messaging is really critical as much as it is about measuring, whether or not they're and tracking whether or not they're taking actions in your product or not. But the messaging that surrounds those features and why they should care, the sort of marketing campaigns, so to speak, around those, a lot of times will sort of live or die on the messaging that you wrap that, because features can mean very different things to very different people depending on the context that serve them up in. This is all very obvious for marketers. As marketers, we know this very well, but it is much more difficult for product marketing teams and product teams to actually execute on this because they don't always think like marketers. This is why product marketing is such a critical function, especially for SaaS teams that are a little bit larger, that have more, teams involved, more segments that they're serving. Just got to get a lot more strategic about how they operationalize the customer experience.
So basically you're saying KYC, know your customer. So that's and that's complicated and
really obvious, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and
Easy to say, hard to do.
Yeah, exactly. So the last thing I want to touch on is, if you had a little wand or you had magic genie's bottle, who is the ideal customer to come and talk to you? Who is your dream customer?
Now you've got Descript and Riverside in my mind, so they actually absolutely qualify. That's exactly the type of scenario. Stage 2. Again, I don't quite know the size of Riverside, but they're a perfect. Where we do best is environments like that. Again, Riverside, I'm totally guessing at the size there, but I'm going to guess that they're, in the few thousands of customers, maybe a few tens of thousands of customers. And we certainly work with teams that have hundreds of thousands of customers, in the prosumer space that have been around for longer, more mature teams and things like that. But I would say that generally where we really, really shine is in scenarios where you realize that what got you here isn't going to get you there. You have happily paying customers that are getting a ton out of your solution today, but you're not doing good enough of a job as you need to be, not only in your positioning and messaging out on the market and in your website, but also in your early product experience and in your customer's product experience. And you know that there's an opportunity to do a better job. You've got a great product, but you need this sort of go-to-market and customer experience layer on top of it to really hit that level of sort of scale and predictability. So that's a good sweet spot for us. Anybody who has happily paying customers can benefit from this process.
we obviously have got two things here. We've got your book that people need to go and have a look at, and I think they can go to your website and they can find links to that. I didn't even mention customer-led growth, which is another process that you
Yeah, that's essentially the process that I've just described. Doing research and then operationalizing that research to identify your growth levers. That's CLG in a nutshell, and that's what the book really covers. One thing worth mentioning about the book too, I don't know if you had a chance to actually dive into it or not, but it's very short. We worked very hard at making it very short and practical. We didn't want to write a big long theory. It's the type of book where you would read it from front to back and sort of make a decision on whether or not you think you can apply it. And if you think you can, and if you think you have the team to be able to sort of DIY it, then give it to members of your team and execute on it by all means. If it's a process that you think could work really well for you and you don't have the time to wait for your team to execute on it, then that's the perfect scenario to reach out to us.
Awesome. Now, the last thing I want to mention, you also have your own podcast, so we must send folks to that. So we're going to have a link in the description. What is the best way for folks to get in touch with you, Georgiana?
I'm definitely the website. I'm so inconsistent with social media. I wouldn't dare send anybody to any of my social media profiles at this point. Maybe LinkedIn, but I would say that the website is probably best.
Great. So I will put that up. You'll see that on your screen or here or somewhere floating around here. It's definitely going to be there. It'll come in post. But it's been such a treat chatting to you, and I can see how much you love customer-led growth and your experience shines through. So thank you so much for sharing some of your pearls of wisdom. Let's hope we don't trample them underfoot.
Thank you so much for having me.
I really do appreciate your comments. So why not go and watch this live on YouTube or go to my website, kuhne.no. That's Kuhne.no for more information.